my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got another book talk video to share with you guys. And today we are talking about The Girl Below by Bianca Zander. The Girl Below is a really interesting story. It's kind of hard to categorize into a specific genre. There's definitely some elements of mystery to it. There's a little bit of a coming-of-age story in there. There's definitely a lot of family relationships that are explored within it. But I guess at its core, maybe we'd call it a mystery. So first of all, we meet Sookie. Sookie is just about 30 years old, and she is returning to London from New Zealand. She grew up in London, and then when her mom passed away, she moved to New Zealand to try to reconnect with her estranged father. That didn't really go as planned, and so eventually she wants to go home. There's like a longing in her to leave New Zealand and just go home. So she goes with no money, hardly, no job, no prospects, and she ends up sort of crashing at a friend's place on her couch. And as time goes by, it's just not the ideal situation. Not for Sookie, not for her friend, and not for the other roommates in the apartment. It's just, it gets to be bad, and Sookie, eventually, they ask her to leave. So this kind of sends Sookie out in search of the old London that she used to know. She's in need of wanting to find something that sort of reminds her of the past and anchors her back to the life she used to have. So what she does is she goes to the neighborhood where she grew up, and she finds herself back at the sort of apartment building where they lived, and she's looking through the names by the door on the buzzers, and she notices that an old family friend still lives in the building. So she buzzes her, and she's let up, and once she gets up there, she sort of comes face to face with the nurse of the woman. And she says, you know, you can see her, she always loves seeing people from the past, but she's not in great health, and, you know, I don't know how much she'll recognize you or anything like that. So Sookie goes back and finds Peggy, that's the woman, and she talks to her, and as she's talking to her, she realizes that Peggy thinks that Sookie is Sookie's mom. I think her name was Hillary. And so she kind of just lets it be. But she comes back and she visits a bit, and then she runs into, one time while she's visiting, Peggy's daughter Pippa, who when they were kids and Sookie lived in the building, Pippa used to babysit her. She was just kind of that cool older kid in the building that Sookie really looked up to. And as we're learning about all this, we're also getting some flashbacks to different times when Sookie was a kid and lived in the building, like a party that her parents had where Pippa and her friends had attended too, and there was just some weird things going on with these young girls and Sookie's dad, but Sookie only remembers it from a child's point of view, so she doesn't really know what was going on. And so then we're back in the present day, and Sookie begins to kind of get involved with Peggy and Pippa and Pippa's family, her husband and her son. And then after a bit of time passes, as luck would have it, Peggy's nurse is going on holiday, and they need someone to stay with Peggy and just sort of look after her and just sort of keep an eye on things. So Pippa asks Sookie if she would like to do it, and of course that works out perfectly because now she has a place to stay, and she can also sort of dig a little deeper into some of the past. So meanwhile, throughout all of this, in Peggy's apartment there's this huge, terrifying statue, and Sookie has been scared of this statue since she was a child, and in her mind she had always referred to it as Madeline, and so that statue's just kind of in the apartment still, and it really gives her the creeps. And in Peggy's apartment, she doesn't have a TV. There's just books, and it's very dark and quiet. And just knowing the statues in the apartment just really puts Sookie on edge all the time. So her week up with Madeline is over soon enough, and then Pippa says, well, you know, we're about to go on vacation. Pippa and her husband and her son, and then they're also taking Peggy over to Greece, where Pippa's husband is from. And by the sounds of it, they make this trip pretty often, maybe once a year. And so she says, you know, you could stay in our home, which is close by, and while we're gone for like the month, and you'd have somewhere to stay, and you can sort of look around and get a feel for things, maybe find a job, a place to live, but not have to stress too much in the meantime. So Sookie says, great. She moves in, and then as the family's getting ready to leave, the son decides he doesn't want to go. Now this son, he is 16 years old. He's super cranky all the time. Just a real moody, pain-in-the-ass 16-year-old. And so eventually, Pippa sort of gets it in her head that maybe Sookie would be a good influence on the son, which his name is Nick. So she thinks that Sookie will be a good influence on Nick. So she says, you know, could we leave him? Like, he's pretty self-sufficient. He's 16, but, you know, I can't leave him unless there's someone else in the house. So, not for that long. And so Sookie's like, yeah, I mean, I guess. Don't expect me to be that good of a role model because I don't have any of my own life together. But then they leave, and it's pretty interesting because as time goes by, Sookie and Nick actually develop quite a close relationship. Though honestly, one part of the book that kind of bothered me is it sometimes would veer into a little bit of inappropriate areas, and then Sookie would kind of snap herself out of it and be like, no. But I didn't like that element of it. I thought it was a little weird and maybe a little uncomfortable, and I just kept thinking, like, if the roles were reversed and like that was a 30-year-old man and a 16-year-old girl, like, it's not okay. And it was creepy, and it made me look at Sookie a little differently. But anyway, so time goes by, and after I'm thinking like a week or two, Pippa's brother shows up, and his name is Harold. And Sookie remembers him from when they were kids too. He had been sent away to like a boarding school, and so he was kind of this elusive neighbor child that she didn't really know well, but she recognized him and knew him. So he kind of just shows up, and he's looking to visit his mom, and then she's like, well, they're gone to Greece. So he just sort of hangs out anyway, and he starts to notice the sort of inappropriateness between Sookie and the 16-year-old. But he actually thinks it's worse than it is, and you can see he's just kind of really, really suspicious about what's going on. Then after a little while, Pippa reaches out and tells them that Peggy's health is failing, and she wants the family, like Harold and Nick, to go to Greece, and she's also asked for Sookie to come. So Sookie's like, why does she want me to come? That's really weird. Harold also thinks it's really weird, but whatever, that's not really ever explained. So she goes to Greece, and now, spoilers, I'm going to start giving a bit of spoilers, so if you're interested in reading this book and you don't want to hear the spoilers, now's the time to click off. Alright. So she goes to Greece, and Peggy's there. Peggy finally knows her name, and she knows that she's not her mother, and Peggy seems to feel a connection with her, because as she reveals to Sookie, she knows that Sookie also got weird vibes off of Madeline. Now, this is where things get a little choppy for me. She says, you know, I know Madeline talks to you too. And you're like, okay. Now, I didn't really understand what the point of that was, that whole Madeline thing. So I don't know if it was leading up to what happens next to make more sense. So what happens next is Sookie starts having these hallucinations where she'll be in bed and then she'll wake up and she'll open the door to the like small Greek home that she's staying in, but instead of the actual backyard, it's the backyard from her childhood. And her father's there and two of his friends are there, and she's watching a scene unfold. Now this scene is never explained, even though night after night she wakes up, goes and looks, and we see the scene unfold. So it's served to us as though she's having some sort of supernatural experience. And within that experience, she'll be able to find the answer to some questions that she has about her childhood. But the problem is, we're not told what the questions are, and we're not told what the answer is. And honestly, the way I looked at those sort of supernatural elements was less of it actually happening and more of it happening in her head, like maybe a dream state taking her to the memories where she can unfold what happened. But again, we're never told what happened. So in some ways, I thought that, I think that what they were hinting at, and I could be wrong, but what I took from it was that Sookie was discovering that she had been maybe sexually abused by her father or these friends when she was young. But that's never confirmed, but that's just what I took from it, and it would make some sense. It would make some other things make sense in the story. But yeah, again, it's never confirmed. So what I would say about it, like, I enjoyed reading it. It kept my interest. It kept me wondering what was going on. It was that sort of mystery where there's like this air of something that's up and you're waiting to find out what it is. But in my experience, you never do. So that's kind of what I took away from it, that she was discovering a history of childhood abuse that she hadn't realized that she had. And then the very end, it shows us that Peggy's passed on and she's, the family's celebrating her life. And we really get the feeling that Sookie has sort of been accepted into this family, which makes you feel good because, her mom has passed on, obviously, and then her dad's in New Zealand and really wants nothing to do with her because he's got this new family, new kids, new wife, and he wants nothing to do with her, really. And then as we find out that something weird happened, you see that's probably for the best for Sookie, that he wants nothing to do with her. So yeah, there you go, you guys. That was The Girl Below. Yeah, like, I enjoyed it. It was easy to read. It kept me going. I read it very quickly. But the ending was just a little confusing for me, and I don't know if that's just me or if everyone kind of was like, what is this? Because it seems like the supernatural elements were just kind of out of place and were used as a way to tell the story when it didn't work. And to me, it always felt like the supernatural elements were in her head, not actually happening. So there you go. Next week's Book Talk 2, I'm going to be talking about the winner of this year's Giller Prize, Bellevue Square. And that one's also a really mind-bending book that's hard to describe, even more so than this, but in a more well-done way, I think. So, yeah, there you go. In the comments, let me know if you guys have read this book before, and what did you think of it? And before I go, of course, it's Friday here on my channel, so I want to give a shout out. The lady I want to shout out today, her channel name is Joy in Your Heart, and she is just a sweetheart. On her channel, she does a lot of makeup reviews, tutorials, she does hauls, she has some vlogs. She's just got a bunch of all different kinds of things, and she's so supportive, And I think you should definitely go and check her channel out if you're into those kinds of things. And if you do, please let her know that I sent you. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.